All right, haven't done a YouTube farm update lately. Here at our half-acre SHTF farm. Started last year, and we've just a little over doubled our membership this year. We were 5 members, parties I should say, because there's a bunch of couples. 5 parties last year, and we're 12 parties this year. So we're going to double the production of our farm, meaning that we're basically just going to get twice as much yield out of each bed than we did last year. How are we doing that? Well, we're just getting more succession plants happening. So doubling up. We were really lazy last year, and that term's somewhat subjective with when you're talking about farming, because you can't really be lazy when you're farming, especially when you got to spread half acre of 2 inches of compost on each bed like we just did here. But we took it fairly easy because we only got 1 rotation out of each of these beds, meaning that 1 crop was planted, all kinds of crops, and then when it was harvested, it was tarped and left for the season. So we're gonna more than double that this year, especially the fact that we have 4 tunnels now. Last year we only had 1 in production, and we're just putting the poly back on those there. But in this video, I just wanted to share some thoughts with you guys, kind of reflecting on how much land it takes to support a family. And I've had a number of years to reflect on this, and now having a family of 4, but also been farming, gardening, and homesteading for 10 years. And I want to say, really simply, to grow for a family of 4, and there's a lot of variables here, right? Because how much vegetables do you eat? What percentage of your diet is vegetables? What do you eat? All these things. You know, we can only grow certain things here on the land. A lot of what people eat comes from animals too. But if we're just talking about growing, you know, how much does it take? And I want to say, just really simply, it takes about a half acre of land to produce all of the fruits and vegetables, kind of common produce that you would eat. Now let me expand upon that though, because there's a lot of variables here. One is what percentage of your diet is vegetables. Another is how much does your family actually eat? Do you have teenagers? You know what it is. I have young kids that don't eat that much, but they do eat. Another variable is what part of the world do you live in? How long is your season? You know, there's a lot of different variables, and so keep what I'm saying. Keep that in understanding that there's a bit of a context that should be applied, and that will broaden or change your application in this. But right now, this half acre, and let me actually clear up one thing. When I say half acre, and a lot of people in the years, especially on the YouTube comments, always, like, I'll show a piece of land, I'll be visiting some farm. You know, one that I always hear about is that Pakaraka farm that I visited in New Zealand, in Thames, New Zealand, and they're a 1/4 acre, and everybody, oh, it's not a 1/4 acre. Or I did a video with Scott Hebert, people are like, oh, that's not a 1/4 acre. Let me clear up what I actually mean by this so we understand how much land we're talking about in this video. This is a half acre. So what you see fenced here, and all the beds and all the areas, the perimeter of the walkways, this is a half acre, and I'll draw out the dimensions on here for you. So that's what I mean by a half acre, okay? So I'm not talking about just the square footage of the beds and then that's it. I'm talking about the whole area. This is a half acre. And this is, so my family right now, we live in our home in Kelowna is a 1/4 acre lot. It's pretty much exactly a 1/4 acre. And I wouldn't say that that is a 1/4 acre of growing, because I've got a house there, I've got a patio in the front and back, I've got a carport, I've got that Pasta Solar greenhouse, I've got a compost area in the back, I've got a lot of things there that take up that space. This area here is pretty much a solid half acre. There's a little bit of landing where my truck is parked over there, but that's where we dump our compost when we get it. But that's it. So my house, I'm definitely not growing on a 1/4 acre, but I will tell you that we grow at that house, and by partaking in this cooperative farm here, we grow about 95% of all the produce we eat. So what I'm talking about there, and we still buy things like bananas or lemons. I do have some lemon trees in my greenhouse, but they don't produce very much. But that's really all we buy for produce. I often wonder, actually, when I'm going through the grocery store, people who know me will see me, and like the things in my cart are never fresh. I wonder if some people think like, dude, this guy doesn't eat any produce. It's because, no, I grow it all at home. But anyways, the only thing we buy from the stores are things like oils, herbs. Well, we grow a lot of herbs too, actually. Salt. And of course, we buy meat and dairy. And we, for the most part, buy that from directly from farmers we know, sort of like a CSA. And then, we buy grains and things like this. But we actually, ever since this whole pandemic thing started, we actually don't really go to the grocery store much because we started getting radical about our food security so quickly. But needless to say, we grow about 95% of our produce by being a member of this co-op, which is for us is mostly just storage crops that we grow here that we need. Because at home, we can grow everything we eat fresh. Lettuce, spinach, kale, spring onions, every kind of herb, carrots, beets, turnips, radishes, even cabbages I can grow at home. But to get enough to go through winter, I need to have some here. And then fruit, we grow tons of goji berries, raspberries, blackberries, currants, some Saskatoon berries, getting more, and hascaps. Not a lot there. They're not producing that much right now. And we had some fruit. We do have 3 or 4 apple trees there in our little food forest in the back and espalier along the fence. And got a pear tree. Even stuff like melons, cantaloupe, and things like that, I can grow a lot of in that garden. But when it comes to things like winter squash and onions and potatoes, corn even, I need more space to grow that stuff. And that's where this thing comes in. But so if I were to, and so here's another context. Right now I'm developing a 40-acre homestead. So right now, it's kind of insane for me. I'm spending my time on 3 different farms, or homesteads, if you will. My urban homestead in Kelowna, this co-op farm here, which is also in Kelowna, and then my rural homestead that's on 40 acres that's in the middle of nowhere. On that site, my food production site that I'm putting in is about a half an acre. And if I were to look at this land here and think about how I have that half acre laid out, it's almost the same way, as far as it's just a big rectangle, maybe a bit wider than this is, and less long, but half of that is going to be fruit trees. So about a 1/4 acre is going to be dedicated to fairly intensive fruit trees, and then the other half of it is going to be dedicated to vegetable based garden beds, which I'm going to do similar to how I do my garden in Kelowna, which is all raised beds made out of fir that I'm going to be milling at that property. That garden area, I think, should be enough to grow everything that my family needs. So I would say it would be the same with this. This is a half acre. If you were to design this as a homestead garden, half of it I would dedicate to some kind of perennial crops and things like that, and then the other half I would dedicate to intensive square foot gardening, 30-inch beds, whatever. Basically raised bed garden or market farming style, where you can have high density, where you got a 30-inch bed or so, where you can have multiple rows and you can densely plant crops. It's amazing what you can produce with market gardening. I mean, still, after all these years, after all these farms that I've visited in many different countries around the world, I still think the 30-inch bed market garden is the most productive way to grow vegetables with the least amount of inputs that come from external places. Because A garden like this really is a shit hits the fan type garden, because yes, I have a BCS and I use it to manage these beds to some degree. Actually, I barely used it this year. I ran the flail mower on a couple beds that I wanted to mulch down, and then I had a power harrow on a couple, and I rototilled some of the carrot beds because the beds were really misshapen when we finished cropping them out. But needless to say, very little mechanical work needs to be done. This farm right now we've got all this compost spread out, this farm can be completely managed with hand tools. And that's amazing, because even if I was market gardening this half acre, doing it, the way you've seen hundreds of my YouTube videos, I don't farm in that way anymore. That might be news for some people, but it's probably not news for any of you who have been watching my stuff for years. I haven't commercially ran Green City Acres in this is going on the 3rd year. I basically shut down commercial production of Green City Acres in the early winter, late fall of 2018. And then since then, I've been homesteading, gardening, doing this co-op farm, and various other things. But when you saw me do all that stuff the way I was, the farm was very productive. At the height of our production, on our 1/4 acre, which was a collection of basically 3 urban plots, 2 within a block of each other, and then the 3rd one was about 4 blocks away. So super concentrated. That was the most profitable and productive way I'd ever managed that farm, because the farm had many different incarnations I'd been on. There was one time where we had literally had 20 plots of land. No, sorry. We had 12 plots of land going at once. I've turned over about 20 plots of land in Kelowna from ones that I've left and all this. But at that point, when we were a 1/4 acre, it was 2 guys running the operation, basically 2 full-time guys. Not even 2 full-time, because when you look at the winter wasn't full-time, but call it 2 guys, 30 hours a week on average all year. That farm could make $110,000. So that's growing intensive crops, like the stuff that you mostly saw me grow over the last number of years on YouTube, what I call quick crops, high rotation crops, things that have 60 days or less to maturity, salad greens, quick growing root crops like baby roots, turnips, radishes, even carrots in the summer can be a 60-day crop, beets. And then of course microgreens, and then we do some tomatoes, intensive tomatoes. So basically crops like that, we could do over 100,000 on a 1/4 acre. So look at this half acre here. If you had a market to sell all those greens that we were growing, and I can tell you, with our 1/4 acre, we produced a lot, but I felt like we were just meeting what there was enough demand for, without me really pushing hard and spending time to find new customers. So it kind of naturally and really easily, we could sell all that product. So would I do a half acre like this of just salad greens like that? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that. Maybe now I would, with the way the market is now. There's so much demand for local stuff, but it's hard to do just sell a ton of salad greens. It really is, especially now where people are, the most popular model for market gardens right now, in my opinion, the most successful one that I'm seeing, is people that are just doing a website with a e-commerce platform, and they're just selling direct to the customer and they're delivering. That is the CSA, the sort of high-tech CSA model. So you can't really necessarily just do greens and that stuff. You got to have some more variety. So if I were to do a farm right now, keeping the context in mind, I would do in this half acre, I would do a 1/4 acre, so half of it in high rotation crops, and then the other half I would split up between longer season crops, but perhaps not all of them. Like potatoes is really hard to make an economic case for. But you could think about a farm like that in many different ways, because you could have you could use a half acre like this. Say you wanted to do a farmstead. It's a model that I'm a huge fan of. People that are homesteading and then stacking in some kind of commercial enterprise into their homestead. It's a beautiful way of life. It's probably once we see this Great Reset thing roll out, it's probably what I'll be doing. I mean, if they, who knows where this thing's going to go? But if they shut down the internet and you can't do this without a vaccine passport and that, who knows? But I'm prepared to. if I have to go back to being a farmer, that's something I would probably do. I'd have, like, if I had a half acre like this, half of it would be high production crops to sell, and then the other half of it, the other quarter acre, would be dedicated to storage crops and things like that my family would use throughout the year, and storage and things like that, greenhouses in the winter. But you could really get a good cash flow from half of a farm like this, and 100 grand, a couple could run this full time. A site like this, a couple, a mom and a dad, could run a quarter acre like this and not even work full time, have lots of time with the kids, have the kids involved, and crush it. Make money or other resources. Maybe you're charging Bitcoin. Maybe that's what you're going to have to be charging. Maybe you're going to have to be charging Monero, where this whole thing is going. Who knows? But half of the operation you're making money from, and the other half is sustenance for you and your family. And it's a great lifestyle. I gotta say, guys, like, I haven't needed to, this isn't going to be news for people who have been following me for a long time, but I haven't needed to make a living from farming for quite a while. Like, when I published my book in 2016, The Urban Farmer, that was basically the point where I was getting income from other places, that I didn't have to make a living as a farm. But my farm never stopped being profitable, and all the numbers I've ever talked about, and this is full on, no word of a lie, folks, my farm has never stopped being profitable, and all the numbers I talked about are totally legit, and none of them are based on consulting. Like, I see people in the comments who say things like that. Oh, Curtis, he says these numbers, but he's doing consulting and public speaking and all this stuff. No, guys, trust me. Those numbers are way different than the numbers on a farm. Everything I've ever said about the profitability of farming is 100% true, and also verified by hundreds of farmers that I've visited around the world who've done the same thing. But that's what I would do. I would, because you can't grow everything, right? To want to be completely closed loop, it's a noble goal. I'll say that, but it's a lot of work, and to do it right away is next to is I don't want to say it's impossible, because people are amazing. People can do anything, but it's really difficult. So you need to have some kind of revenue or that produces a surplus of something, so that you can buy things from other places. And then for us, that would be meat and dairy. Though we are hunting, we're going to be getting into hunting a lot up at our new property. So we'll see how much more meat we need to buy. But that's what that's how I was thinking about it. This video kind of ended up me just kind of rambling about different things to think about in terms of food production. But going back to where I started, generally speaking, about a half acre is what you would need total to grow all the vegetables and fruits you would eat, taking into consideration that fruit trees take years to establish to the point where you're getting, 50 or 100 apples off a tree. And then, when the bigger they get, of course, you can get way more. But taking into consideration the time it takes, and also your diet. But it's also important, if you're talking about including a vegetable production into that half acre, it has to be intensive. If you're just doing row crops and you're planting a row and then there's 2 feet or a foot between and then another row, that is the most inefficient way to garden. And for a variety of reasons too, right? You're stepping on all the areas in between, so you're compacting your soil a lot more, but you're just using a lot less square footage for growing. In this context, on a 30-inch bed, this farm is 30-inch beds and 18-inch walkways. So well over half, what would it be? 65-70% of the land mass is dedicated to the bed and is not getting walked on, and so you're getting as much production as you can. On my commercial farm with Green City Acres, in my greenhouses, I had 10-inch walkways and a 30-inch bed, because I wanted to just pack as much as I could in. And on the farm, I had 1-foot walkways and 30-inch beds. This farm, because it's more of a family thing, almost all of our members have families. And so there's, when our whole cooperative gets together of all 12 parties, there's like, when we include kids and spouses, it's like 30 or so people. It's insane. We can't even really get us all in the same place at once. So we kind of do things in shifts here, which is cool. But, yeah, so 18-inch walkways made sense on in this farm because there's kids running around, and you just need a bit more space when you have that many people. But yeah, so we're rocking the season now. It's on. It's finally feeling warm and sunny out. If I was farming this commercially, I would have had both those greenhouses would have been completely planted out, and we'd be well into production right now. But in this kind of operation with what we're doing, it's a little bit different. A lot of our members already have gardens too. So the majority of crops here on this site will be long season storage crops this year. However, we do have a smaller contingent, probably like four or five of the parties in the co-op this year don't have gardens. So we are doing a couple things where there's going to be, I think it's going to be these two beds are going to just be auxiliary beds, where basically we'll just divide them up into like 5-foot chunks or something like that, and then the members who don't have gardens can kind of do whatever they want there. And then we are going to do things like peas here. We are doing more greens, like heads of lettuce and things like that. We are doing spinach. We're going to do some beds of herbs. I'm going to do like one bed of basil. So in the summer, I'll probably have it in the ground by late June. I'll have an entire 50-foot bed of basil, maybe even two. And the idea with those two beds is that when they're ready, everybody from the farm comes and we do a big picking, and then everybody can make pesto. And we have access to a friend of ours, access to a commercial kitchen this year. So that's like things we're going to be doing together. A lot of the mums in the farm are super stoked to do that. So they're going to spearhead that, which is exciting. And so we're doing more stuff this year. Like last year, it was just, storage crops: onions, potatoes, shallots, leeks, overwintered kale, carrots, beets. We did some turnips for the winter, and winter squash and corn. I think that's about all we did last year. This year, it's all that stuff and more planting. So we did last year we did 8 beds of potatoes and 1 planting. This year we're doing 18 beds of potatoes because we're doing 3 successions. And so our blocks are split into our blocks are 12. And so we have like a landscape fabric going through half of them, so they're kind of split into 6-foot chunks. So sometimes I think about crops that way as 6. And then in the winter this year, we'll have all these greenhouses going. So there'll be like, I think it's about a whole greenhouse full of carrots that'll be seeded in August that are going to get us all through the winter. There'll be probably 2 beds of kale, 2 beds of overwintered spinach. We'll have probably a bed or 2 of beets. I've done all the farm plan. I'm just going off by memory. But that's kind of how this farm's going to look. There's going to be a bed or 2 of peas, and maybe even 4 beds of pole beans. Blue Lake is my favorite variety. But yeah, that's how things are shaping up. So I hope that is some useful food for thought for you guys. If you want to see how I do all this shit in detail, some people aren't aware of this, probably mostly people who haven't followed me for that long, or maybe haven't checked in on me in a while. But I make a ton of videos still, and they're all up at fromthefield.tv. That's where I put all of my content, and basically extra stuff goes up on YouTube. This will be, like, for example, on From the Field and YouTube as well. But most of my content has been up at From the Field for the last 2 years. We now have over 2,000 videos in there. And I have other great content creators like Stephen Cornett, you might know, Nature's Always Right, Dakota Cohen, Rob Avis, make videos fairly often for From the Field. And right now we have an amazing series going called Open Consult, which I've got experts from particular sectors in sustainable agriculture, like regenerative ag, Dakota Cohen. We've got a microgreen specialist, David Pashard. I do these open consults. Rob Avis is stepping up to do them. And how it works is, for the price of your membership, which is $20 a month, or paying by the year is way cheaper. But for the price of your membership, you get to do a consulting session with any of our experts. And, you have to reach out to them, and they have to you know, see if it's going to make sense or not. There's no guarantee, and then schedule you and all that. But if you go up there right now, you'll see we've got a lot of these coming online, and basically we're doing consulting sessions with you, and then we put the session up on the site, and it's extremely valuable. I mean, I've been consulting for years. I stopped a couple years ago, but I've often thought in my consulting sessions, man, I wish I was recording this, that people could learn from it, because the amount of things that come out of sessions, you know, the problem solving and all that, and, you know, giving people things to think about, there's so much value in it. So that's a lot of the content we're doing right now. I'm, of course, documenting everything that happens on the farm here and up at my new homestead, but that's some of the stuff that's going up there lately. If you guys want to check it out, just head over to fromthefield.tv. All right, I'll see you in the next video.